Hi, baby boomer fans. We are Jackie and Janine, the Pfeiffer sisters, and love to talk about the 1950s, inviting you to reminisce with us as we explore experiences of that decade. Grab your favorite malt or Green River. Make sure you are wide awake and get ready to be inspired about the 1950s. Welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat. Hello, everybody. Oh, my goodness.
Hello.
Number 159, 1950s Fun Chat. Just think of all the wonderful information about the 1950s we have learned from all of our wonderful guests. Today is a little bit different than what we've done before. We've been on a book tour in North Dakota, and we want to tell you about it, don't we, Jackie?
Indeed, we do.
Yes. And we started, Jackie comes from the state, and her husband, Bob, come from the state of Washington. And Fred, who's my husband, and I come from the state of Iowa. So we're meeting up in North Dakota. And so she hits the western border, and I hit the eastern border. And then we eventually end up meeting. Well, we had the opportunity to do quite a bit with our I-94 book vendors this year. And we are so grateful for all of our book vendors, no matter where they are, book vendors, booksellers, however you want to say it. But it just seemed to work out well this year with when we focused on Interstate 94. But you did take some little pit stops in different places in the state too, and met some fine people. So Jackie, the first stop actually was the last stop. We're going to go backwards, folks, in when on our travel log, you might say. Our last stop was at the Fargo, North Dakota Barnes and Noble, in which there was a book signing. And Jackie, you unfortunately, I could not be there for that last day of signing, but Jackie took over. She is a marvelous marketer of our book, While the Windmill Watched, A Slice of Rural America in the 1950s. So can you share a little bit with us about the when you were at Barnes & Noble in Fargo?
Sure. Thank you for the compliment, but I just start talking about the truth. What's in the book, why we wrote the book, and how has been so inspirational to many folks who have read the book. Now, I don't know if you are aware of this, but in the state of North Dakota, grades 4 and 8 have a class called North Dakota Studies. And there are several classes, schools in North Dakota using this book. It is a 4 to 5 grade reading level, and it's quite interesting for students to hear of history from two people who lived it, not just boring black and white print. But we have made modern history, modern in the 1950s, interesting. Now, the first stop or the last stop, I guess, it was in Fargo, Barnes and Noble, a very, very busy place, and they're very supportive of our book. And it was just a real fun time talking to people and children. And one thing that I really just had joy over in that when I introduced the book to the people who were coming in, and one little girl said, "Oh, I want to buy that. I want to buy that. I want to hear more about it." So that really warmed my heart. So that was our stop in Fargo, Barnes and Noble.
Well, and when we talk about having our book, While the Windmill Watched, used in the classroom in North Dakota for the North Dakota Studies classes, we also have to mention that you and I thought that it was very important for the study of our book to write a study guide for teachers. And that's what we have done. We have gone through the chapters in our book. We have almost, you might say, given assignments for the students. We've made the work of the teacher so much easier because here it is. We can hand it to you. Here is their study guide, what you use for your students. There are extra credit questions, but it just helps give the teacher quite an aid to teaching history of the 50s in North Dakota. And we're so thankful that we have that. And homeschoolers too. They are getting on board and using our book. So if you know of any teachers who teach 4th grade or 8th grade in North Dakota, or homeschoolers who might even use it for more of the grades than that, boy, give a look at While the Windmill Watched, because it's a great study source.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So then we're going backwards from east to west across the state. We went to Bismarck, to Barnes and Noble in Bismarck, and with another phenomenal book signing. I tell you, we love all our booksellers, but I must say that Barnes and Noble really rolls out the red carpet for us, both in Fargo and in Bismarck. And we've developed such a close relationship with the managers of those stores, and really with the owners of the bookstores who sell our books. And that's what makes this so much fun. It's just that we're just not out here someone who wrote this book and just let it fly, but we really are dedicated to following up with the story that's in our book and the story of the 1950s. I know, Jackie, when we were out in front of the Barnes and Noble bookstore in Bismarck, which is in Kirkwood Mall, we have many people that we meet as they walk back and forth from one store to the next, or those coming into Barnes and Noble. But you had a really fun experience, again, with someone who was in 4th grade and who had been a part in the classroom of one of our presentations in the schools last year. Can you tell us a little bit about that, the warm fuzzies?
Well, I think you pretty much said what I felt. It was very rewarding to note that this little person remembered us and the story, and again begged her mother to buy it. And then she was asked, well, are you going to read this? Oh, yes, I'm going to read this. So again, that's one of those little things that warms our heart.
Well, and I think you said that when you handed the book to her, she just clutched it like it was a favorite pet. She wasn't going to let go.
She hugged it. Yeah. So, it's those incidences that are really rewarding. Yeah. And, other adults also they don't quite have the demonstrative feeling or showing of that little girl did, but they have said, thank you for writing the book, or I can relate to that, or, oh, I didn't know that happened in the country. Oh, this is very interesting, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and when people talk to us about the 1950s or what they recall, that's what was the incentive to start these 1950s fun chats, because people do enjoy talking about that time in their lives and want to try to identify with us as the authors of While the Windmill Watched.
That's right.
Okay.
So what town is in between Bismarck and Fargo?
Yes,
Valley City.
That's
Valley
right.
City. We have a wonderful rapport with Eagle's Nest Bookstore in Valley City. The owner sells used books and new books, and we stopped there to replenish the supply there.
Mm-hmm. I had never met Bev Howe, who manages the store, the Eagle's Nest bookstore, and I was delighted to meet her. And her store is so nicely kept, and over there on the shelf of North Dakota items was our book. And so it was really fun to meet her and get a feel of how she operates her store. Well, I might also mention too that when we were in Bismarck, there were some things that happened that allowed me to stay on a few days longer, and because of that, I was in contact with our dear 1950s Fun Chat guest, who's the lead Capitol tour guide, Cindy Solberg. She and I should have written down which number of Fun Chat that she had with us, but it was just such a wonderful experience to meet her in person. And she took me on a personal tour of our North Dakota Capitol. It is a phenomenal structure. The history behind it, of the development of it and the interior of it, is just one that each of us should learn and appreciate of that time. So that was my little side trip of the day in Bismarck, was visiting with Cindy and seeing our beautiful Capitol.
And that Capitol is known as the skyscraper of the prairies.
Yep.
When it was first built, it sat on a little hill in North Bismarck all by itself, sitting on the prairie. And of course, the town has grown up around it, but it's very unique. Many of the state capitals have a dome. This one is a tall, straight structure that has withstood North Dakota winds since the 30s.
And what is, I know you probably know this better than I do, but Mom and Dad had knowledge, of course, of that Capitol when it was built, and they lived in Bismarck in the late 30s and the 40s, and Mom actually worked at the Capitol. But I know Dad said once about the Capitol being built out in this pasture. Was that correct?
Yes, and he said that at one time he owned property right there, and so he was wishing, well, maybe I should have kept the property. But anyway, that was his little connection with the Capitol building.
And Mom, who worked at the Capitol then, went to the New Year's Eve balls that were
and held. Mom and Dad.
Yes, tell us about that. I know, because Cindy asked me, you have Mom's ball gown.
Yes, the dress that she wore to this New Year's Eve dance. And I guess that happened often, but Mom and Dad went once.
Yes, and it was this beautiful black gown. Mom had this tall 5'7", 5'8" frame, a thin frame, and I'm sure she was a very, very lovely guest at that New Year's Eve ball. And wearing this black gown. So Cindy had asked me. She said, "Do you know what any more about when she and Dad were at the ball?" And other than the only thing I could tell her was I knew about the dress, and that was it.
Yeah, and if she wanted to have the dress on display, we'd be glad to give it to her.
Oh, I'll have to get a hold of her and see. Yeah, let me make a note. Cindy, black dress, Mom. Okay. Oh, well, folks, you might see Mom's ball gown there on display in the Capitol building of North Dakota. Okay. When going backwards, then when we left Bismarck, Jackie, you were again more in the west than first before I got there. But tell us about the Badlands Dinosaur Museum at Dickinson.
Okay. They have been a vendor of ours for several years now, and it is a place there's a museum, but it's also a place where they bring the bones and they dust the dust off of them, and they catalog them, and it's a research area. Most of the bones come from eastern Montana. So it's interesting in that they have classes for students as well. I guess that's about all I can tell you about.
Okay, then, and I think they have more museum items too.
Right, in a different building. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm kind of interested in learning more about the old machinery that they have there. That was probably quite a bit of it might have been used in the 1950s. So maybe we'll eventually have a 1950s fun chat with them.
Right. And we did attempt to go there, but the building happened to be locked when we were there. So didn't get to see it.
Okay.
So So also in Dickinson, we made a visit to the Dickinson State University Library and learned a lot about their library and how they really emphasize Theodore Roosevelt there. And then there is also on campus a Theodore Roosevelt Museum. Very interesting, very well documented. There's a docent there. And, Theodore Roosevelt's kind of the guy who has associated himself with North Dakota. And because of that, in July 2026, his presidential library is going to be dedicated. Right now it's being built. The construction started last June, and it's quite unique because part of it's built right into the North Dakota, the hillside there. It's going to be an exquisite building.
In the Badlands.
In the Badlands, right on the hill up the hill from the town of Medora, which we will talk more about later.
Yes. And you and Bob took a little side trip going up through the north of Badlands.
We went through the north unit of the Theodore Roosevelt National Park, and that has such interesting topography. So thanks to the oil money, the road is spectacularly beautiful and wide. And we ended up in Watford City. And one of the vendors is Pioneer Gifts and Books. And so we stopped there and left some books, some more books. They needed more. And for Bob, though, he's the ice cream king. So they had some wonderful, delicious ice cream there, and they have a waitress behind the counter who creates coffee and ice cream drinks. So he had one of her specialties.
How
So
fun.
it's a place to stop, not only for purchasing books, looking at museum items, but they have pretty good ice cream and coffee drinks.
Okay. Well, and the unique feature about that McKenzie County Museum is that we have also had fun chats with two folks from that area. The first one was, I was quickly looking up these fun chat numbers. Jan Dodge, who had been, would you say, manager of that Long X Museum, McKenzie County Museum. If in case you want to look at them, and you can go to our website of our book, whilethewindmillwatch.com, where all of the previous 1950s fun chats are on that website. And that's a really neat thing to have there, because every guest picture is shown by the chat that they will talk about, that will occur. All you have to do is double click that picture of the guest and away you go. But anyway, Jan's is number 115, and she did a phenomenal job of telling us about the Long X Trail, and that this was a cattle trail up from the southern Texas all the way up through up to Watford City, through to the grasslands of Watford City, and the number of horses and cattle and cowboys that were involved with that. It was a very interesting fun chat. Of course, how it happened, what you might say the results of those Long X cattle drives, the impact that they had on the town of Watford City, and we talked about the 1950s. And then Jessie Veeder, who is also associated with the museum, her fun chat is number 117. She's a young gal, Jackie, but she is full of enthusiasm for living in the West and living in a ranch, and it's a generational ranch. And boy, what else do you recall about Jessie? Has she talked about?
She's a recording artist as well. Beautiful voice, guitar. She does perform. She's a mom and lives out quite a few miles from Watford City. So, but you're right about her love of ranching and the value of having children grow up on a ranch.
Yes, yes. That the Western North Dakota is a very unique area, and one of which I don't recall having known much about it. It seemed like we were pretty focused on the middle part of our state, near Bismarck, where we grew up. And then to go west, that was kind of almost another world for me as a child. So I'm really excited to learn more about the history of our state because of what we're doing at the fun chats and our books being at those vendors out there. Okay, let's get back to Medora. We did a lot when we were in Medora, and what a beautiful tourist area that speaks so well of the history of the West in North Dakota. And Jackie, what were some of the bookstores?
The high points?
Yeah.
Well, we have had a long relationship with Western Edge Books with our vendor Doug. He has a phenomenal bookstore. Quite a few books on the West, and in fact, Janine and I have we are distinguished in that we have our book is in a very special section. It's called Women of the West. That's what he has included us in, along with all those other Western ladies like Calamity Jane and etc.
So we didn't have 6-shooters on our sides.
But anyway, that's one of the sections we are in his Western Edge bookstore. Then we also visited the North Dakota Cowboy Museum, where the director has been one of our guests.
Number 104.
Then he said, well, we'd like to be a vendor. So how can you expound on that one?
Well, the North Dakota Cowboy Hall of Fame is a beautiful, beautiful collection of to the remembrance of the North Dakota cowboy, and they have honored many people in of North Dakota who brought cowboying and ranching to the forefront in the state. It's a wonderful museum. It's 2 stories of pictures of articles of artifacts, whatever that all related to the cowboy.
And the collection of bronzes there is phenomenal.
Yes, yes. So we just thoroughly enjoyed meeting Rick Thompson, who's the executive director. We met him face to face, and he's just such a welcoming guy that you can't help but feel that you are very welcomed in that museum, that Cowboy Hall of Fame museum. So anyway,
I want to know too that not only cowboys but cowgirls have been honored.
Yes, and I oftentimes forget to say that because I'm thinking in my mind, cowboy, cowgirl, they're together. But yes, there certainly is a distinction. Rodeo pictures of Miss Rodeo North North Dakota queens are on display there, along with some history of some of them. It's just there's so much more there than what we can even talk about. You need to stop and visit if you're in that Medora area. We did have the opportunity to go to the Medora musical, and oh my goodness, Jackie, I hadn't been to the Medora musical since probably it first started in the 1960s. And I remember the fact that we were there and that we sat on a bench and that it was in an outdoor amphitheater. But that's really all I remember about it at the time. But oh, wow, has that changed? The theater type seats, the escalator that takes you down from way up on the top of the canyon, you might say, down into the lower part where the stage is for the musical, and everything that happens for the musical. Then it has these 2 elevators. If you're handicapped, if you have trouble walking, if you just don't want to climb stairs or they have it all set up for you right there. I can't say enough about the courtesy that the people at the Medora musical and really in Medora have showed to us, just because we're regular people and guests who they want to make feel comfortable and welcome. But that's kind of it's North Dakota nice, right?
Yes, I guess so.
Yes,
kindness.
That's true. Well, and it was warm. It was really hot when that next day when we were still in Medora. But continuing on with the musical, you will absolutely love the feel of being in the North Dakota Badlands as you're at the Medora musical. It's a phenomenal place.
And the dancers and singers are top notch.
Yes. And Teddy Roosevelt was there, being a part of that musical too. It was very patriotic and very much associated with the history of Teddy himself. Horses.
So do you want to explain that? Teddy Roosevelt was there. His name is Joe.
Yes, and I'm unsure of how to pronounce Wiegand or Wiegand. I'm not unsure how to pronounce his last name, but he certainly does look like a Teddy Roosevelt character from what I've seen pictures of Teddy, and he has that very assured sound to him as he is on the stage and tells the story of his life in North Dakota. Well, something else that we did in Medora, which is fun, and hopefully we anticipate that it represents what the future will be for While the Windmill Watch, our book. Mr. Daniel Bielinski, who is the head of Canticle Productions in Bismarck, has his company in Medora. They were there this summer as they were filming for the upcoming film, Medora. And Jackie, can you explain a little bit more about what you know about the film of Medora?
Well, Medora, first of all, was the wife of the Marquis de Moore, and the Marquis established, with the help of his father-in-law's money, established a meat packing slaughterhouse there, so that the cattle coming up or surrounding the area would come to Medora, and they wouldn't have to be shipped all the way to Chicago for that packing place. They would be butchered there, processed, frozen, and then shipped to Chicago and to the East. So anyway, this worked for about 3 years, and then the father-in-law said, I'm not making any money on this. And so Medora went back to France to her father. And so eventually the packing place burned, and there's still a chimney there. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the town was named, what was it, Little Missouri or something? And then he changed it to Medora. And so her house is still sitting on the hill, and it's kind of near the presidential library where that's being built. And lovely tours there. You just walk in as if she had left that day, because things are still tables set, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm. And so go ahead. Well, here we were on the set of Medora, mm-hmm. which is right. It's just kind of out on the prairie within the Badlands, and is this group of fronts of buildings, and where we met Dan and his staff and and saw some of the scenes that were being shot at that time. And Medora was on side saddle on horseback, and she was very lovely. And the Marquis was on horseback, and then there were other wagons going back and forth with teams, and it was just a really neat experience. And filming though it can take a while, because you just need to have that right feature of every shot. And mm-hmm. so oftentimes you have to do a lot of takes, but it was fun to be a part of that. And hopefully in the near future, while the Windmill Watched, the film will be produced as well. And so we're really looking forward to that. Jackie and I will serve as executive producers, and we're so looking forward to it, having some input into how our lives were affected by the 1950s, and really how the lives of rural America itself were affected by the wonderful technology and advancements and creation of medicines to help all of mankind that took place in the 1950s. So we're looking forward to that, and we hope that you as viewers will keep an eye out for when we can announce when the film will be started.
Started.
And then we ended up going home, didn't we? Well,
we did.
Yep. And so it's our once a year trip up to North Dakota, and it's fun to do this all together. And of course, the reason behind it is because of the book and the story we wrote about growing up in the 1950s. And we want to thank you as listeners to this fun chat who learn about a little bit about that story, but also are interested enough to watch the different fun chats and hear stories of other who lived in the 50s or other events that occurred in the 50s too. Mm-hmm. It was a marvelous time, and maybe you are one of them who actually lived there in the 50s. Anything else, Jackie, we want to cover about this?
No, except don't forget to look at the bottom, that little purple banner, wildthewindmillwatched.com. So go there for any information on the vendors. What we spoke of a few right now, of the places we might be signing books, or as Janine mentioned, the 1950s Fun Chat. 1950s Fun Chats. Yes, you can take a look at all of those. Mm-hmm. The book is up there, and notice there's a little white symbol on that book. Well, that's because the book was published in 2021. In 2022, it won that award. It's an Independent Press Award for the Distinguished Favorite in a Regional category. Mm-hmm. So,
mm-hmm. And I might mention too, if you're interested in purchasing a signed copy, Bismarck Barnes & Noble has quite a few of them, as does the North Dakota Cowboy Hall of Fame, and
I think Fargo,
Barnes & Noble in Fargo, and a lot of people do enjoy having a signed copy. So there you go, and it's a great item to consider giving at Christmas time. Children or adults, it's loaded with pictures from our years of growing up in the 50s, news clippings, and recipes. We can't forget about recipes. Some of Mom's recipes and some of our local Minokan Homemakers Club members' recipes. They're great recipes, and yet they certainly identify with that decade of being that type of recipe and maybe having those kind of ingredients in them.
And if you're not near any of those vendors that we have listed, just click on North Dakota State University bookstore, and it's one of the first things that comes up, and they will be happy to send you a copy.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that neat? Anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world. Okay. Well, folks, thank you for following us on as we reminisced about our third annual North Dakota book tour. Who knows? We'd like to do it again next year. If what's that slogan? Something if the creek don't rise.
If the creek don't rise, yeah. What's the first part of it?
I can't remember. Maybe someone can comment to us.
Tennessee Ernie Ford said that as he signed off in the 50s of his program.
Yes. Yeah.
We'll see you if the creek don't rise. Sorry, we need to research that.
Okay. Thank you for following our 1950s Fun Chats, and we'll see you next time.
Okay. Toodaloo. Bye-bye.